Hi everyone, just a little teacher dismissal module. This is a module I started off with this slide of the Donald because in your careers, a few of you might have to go through some termination and evaluation proceedings, and so it's something worth knowing about. It's always good to know the potential ending and assume that you'll never have to deal with any of this stuff. So I hope that's the case for all of you. But just so you know what it is all about. So first off, evaluating teachers, all right? This has changed in recent years. We have a new evaluation system, PGIS, that's come into place. I'm sure you've heard lots of people complain about it. Nevertheless, we have some leftover stuff out of the existing teacher evaluation system. Teachers can be evaluated in one of three ways. The evaluation plan for a district is usually published. And so you have very specific evaluation procedures. We'll take a look at those in class about when we can and how we can evaluate teachers. All right. Now, I bring up due process in this teacher termination module because if a school district wanted to terminate you as a teacher, sorry, it's late, they have to go through a lot of due process to do so. Why? Because they're taking away both a property and liberty interest on your part as the teacher. All right, and so only are you granted due process rights, though, when you are dismissed or in the event of a RIF, which we'll talk about in just a minute. However, you are not granted due process when it comes to non-renewals. All right, now that due process, which you'll see in a couple slides from now, that is what is so valuable to you as a teacher. That is at the heart of what tenure is. Because when you get tenure, you're entitled to due process in all cases. And that due process is hard. School districts don't like doing it. So that's really where the protection of tenured teaching really comes in. All right, so before we get to that, let's talk about the instance when you are not provided protection, and that is in the instance of a non-renewal. All right, during your first 4 years of teaching, you may be non-renewed. That just simply means that your contract is allowed to expire after the first year. You are on only 1-year teaching contracts for those first 4 years. After that, then when tenure kicks in, there's an automatic renewal provision. But during the first 4 years, you might be non-renewed. All right, they have to give you notice of that non-renewal, and a lot of times teachers get pink slipped. That's what it'll be called. It'll be called pink slipped in the school environment. What that is a non-renewal. A lot of early career teachers will be pink slipped, and then they'll be brought back later in the summer once they have more clarity around what the school's budget is. All right, so you do not have to give any reason for non-renewal. You're just simply telling the teacher that they do not have a contract for that following year. All right, so that could happen to you in the first few years. Don't freak out. A lot of time non-renewals are picked back up when the economy is good. Okay, now let's jump into termination for cause. Here is the heart of the protections that you have as a teacher. So you get through those first few years as a teacher and you reach tenure. Perfect. So once you reach tenure, you can only be terminated for cause or for financial concerns, which is a reduction in force. That's what a RIF is called. That's the only ways that you can be terminated. All right. So assuming that financial times are not hard and you're not reduced in force for economic reasons, then the only really way to terminate you as a teacher is to go through this pathway under 161.790 in Kentucky, and only under these 6 potential termination clauses: incompetency, immorality, insubordination, neglect of duty, unprofessional conduct, or other good and just cause, which doesn't get used very often. The first 5 do the job. So now, those are huge words that cover tons of territory, and almost any bad behavior can fall underneath of those, but those are the specific behaviors that they are trying to prove when they're seeking to terminate your contract. So, how do they specifically prove that you have fallen into one of those categories, well, this is the due process requirements. This is where all the protection is for you as a teacher, because here is the step-by-step procedure for how to go through a teacher termination due process procedure. You have to provide notice of the charges. Then there's an initial hearing. There has to be access to evidence given. Legal counsels can get involved. There has to be presentations of evidence and witnesses, opportunities to cross-examine. Then there is, all that is still at the school level for a decision by the board. All that then has to be packaged up into transcripts, and then you have the opportunity to appeal to the court system where you can do the entire process over again. This process can take years and cost tens of thousands of dollars, which is why school districts do not love engaging in this due process procedure. They would much rather finding an amicable solution on the part of both parties, or move you to a different school in the district, or try to push you out. So there's a lot of ways to sort of get around it without having to engage the legal procedures. However, these are the legal procedures. School districts absolutely can terminate a teacher, and it does happen, and I know many school leaders that have done so, and rightfully so. They just have to go through this pretty long and complex procedure to do so. That's at the core of what tenure is. It is forcing school districts into the long due process battle after your fourth year, once you become a tenured teacher. And because of that long and very difficult process, school districts are reluctant to do it. Thus, tenure winds up being reinterpreted as this really way that teachers can't really be fired. So not true at all. We'll talk more about that in class. That's the core of how teachers are evaluated and terminated here in Kentucky.